I stood frozen in my driveway, my heart thumping like a bass drum in my chest. The goat pen was empty, no sign of Daisy or Milo anywhere. At first, I figured they'd somehow slipped out, but then I noticed the footprints, heavy boot marks pressed deep into the mud, dragging hoofprints alongside them. The trail led straight to Linda's house. Linda, the self-proclaimed ruler of our homeowners association, the same woman who strutted around the neighborhood every morning with a clipboard like she was commanding a military outpost. My stomach churned when I spotted Milo's bright blue collar poking out from under her side gate, half buried in the dirt. This wasn't some random fluke. Linda had finally done it. She'd stolen my goats. It wasn't the first time she'd gone out of her way to make my life hell. Ever since I'd moved into this picture-perfect, overly groomed neighborhood, she'd had it out for me like I was her sworn enemy. First, it was nitpicking about my lawn being a quarter-inch too tall. Then it was griping over unapproved holiday decorations. But stealing my goats? That was a new low, even for her. I marched up to her door and pounded on it with my fist. I half expected her to fling it open with that smug grin she always wore. Instead, Greg answered, her loyal sidekick and self-appointed HOA enforcer. He stood there like a budget rent-a-cop, his ill-fitting polo stretched tight over his belly, clipboard tucked under his arm. "Afternoon," Greg said with a greasy smile. "I see you got your notice." "Notice?" I snapped. He handed me a folded paper with a smirk. It was an official-looking HOA citation claiming my goats had been confiscated due to noise complaints, safety issues, and, believe it or not, excessive staring. "You can't just take my animals," I growled. "Sir, your goats violated HOA bylaws," Greg droned. "Linda's kindly offered to rehome them." Rehome? No chance I was swallowing that. I shoved past Greg and bolted for the side gate. He stumbled after me, yelling something about trespassing, but I didn't care. I threw the gate open, expecting to find Daisy and Milo tied up in her backyard. Instead, I saw something far worse. Linda's massive barbecue smoker was pumping out smoke like a factory chimney, the thick, savory smell of cooking meat hanging in the air. My heart stopped. "No, no, no," I muttered. Greg smirked behind me. "You people are sick," I said. "Tell me my goats aren't in there." "Relax," Greg chuckled. "Linda's just cooking her famous mystery meat." I felt nauseous. This wasn't just Linda's latest petty jab. This was personal. "Where are they?" I demanded, my voice sharp enough to slice through Greg's smugness. Before he could answer, I heard it, a faint bleat, barely audible over the sizzling meat. I whipped around. It came from her garage. "Daisy!" I shoved Greg aside and raced to the garage door, yanking the handle with all my strength. Locked. Daisy bleated again, desperate. "You're out of line," Greg shouted. "The HOA has every right." "Yeah, and I have every right to call the cops," I fired back. That word, cops, wiped the smugness off Greg's face. He stiffened, stammering about community protocol, but I was already dialing 911. Greg, clearly panicking, darted toward the backyard. I wasn't sure what Linda's endgame was, but I wasn't waiting to find out. Minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I explained everything. When they ordered Linda to open her garage, she played innocent, all smiles and fake charm. "Oh goodness, I had no idea those animals were in there," she cooed as she unlocked the door. It creaked open, and there they were, Daisy and Milo, wide-eyed and spooked. Milo's fur was streaked with mud, and Daisy had a rope loosely knotted around her neck. "Looks like you've got some explaining to do," one officer said, giving Linda a hard stare. "I was just keeping them safe," Linda protested. "I found them wandering the neighborhood." "You stole them," I shot back. Linda's face twisted with her usual arrogance. "Your goats have been a nuisance for months, tearing up gardens, disturbing the peace. I had every right to act." "You had no right to lock them in your garage," the officer snapped. As the cops took statements, Greg slinked back into the yard, eyes darting like a kid caught stealing cookies. That's when I noticed something in Linda's smoker. It wasn't my goats, thank God, but it was definitely meat, a hefty slab sizzling on the grates, dripping dark juices. "What is that?" I asked, pointing. "Oh, that." Linda's smile widened. "Just a special recipe for my HOA friends. My mystery meat." Something in her tone made my gut twist. "Where's Milo?" I asked. For the first time, Linda faltered. Gave him away, she mumbled. Who'd you give him to? The air went still. Linda didn't answer. Instead, Greg blurted. She put him in the fundraiser. I froze. The HOA was hosting a livestock fundraiser that weekend, a fancy auction masked as charity. My goat was about to be sold off. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. Linda crossed her arms, smug. I told you I'd rehome them. You better hope I find him before I start calling lawyers, I shot back. I led Daisy home, her fur still damp from whatever she'd been through. Milo was still out there, and one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Linda had crossed a line, and I wouldn't stop until I got my goat back. That night, I barely slept. Daisy paced her pen, restless without Milo. I couldn't blame her. They'd been inseparable since I'd brought them home. I sat on my back porch, gnawing my thumbnail, plotting my next move. The cops had warned Linda, but they said they couldn't do more without proof Milo was still with her or at the fundraiser. The event was days away, and by then, Milo could be gone, sold, butchered, or worse. I couldn't risk it. By morning, I had a plan. I called my neighbor Emily, a tech-savvy, no-nonsense woman who spent more time tinkering in her garage than kissing up to the HOA. When I told her what happened, she didn't hesitate. I'm in, she said. Meet me at my place in an hour. I expected a simple strategy, but Emily was in full heist mode when I arrived. Maps of the community center sprawled across her table. The fundraiser was in the banquet hall, with a fenced livestock area out back. We'll need a distraction, Emily said, tapping the map. If Linda's guarding the animals, we need her eyes elsewhere. Next, I called my Uncle Ray, a retired mechanic with a talent for chaos. When I asked for a distraction, he was way too eager. He promised to bring his special gear, which, knowing Ray, meant stuff that hissed, popped, or blew up. That night, I drove by the community center to scout. Behind the chain-link fence, I saw goats penned up. Squinting through the dark, I spotted Milo's white ear patch. Relief hit me, but it didn't last. Linda was there, pacing near the pen like a hawk, glancing at the parking lot as if waiting for someone. Saturday arrived fast. The fundraiser was buzzing. Families wandered between barbecue stands, bake sales, and raffle tables. The air smelled of grilled meat and roasted corn, but my stomach twisted with nerves. Milo was out back, and I had one shot to get him. Uncle Ray kicked off his distraction right on cue. He rolled in with a cart stacked with flashing lights, speakers, and dangling wires, claiming it was a science demo. When it started spitting sparks and blaring circus music, people, including Linda, flocked to watch. With her distracted, Emily and I slipped behind the community center. The livestock pen was quiet, save for a few bleats and snorts. I scanned the animals, sheep, ponies, chickens, until I saw Milo tied up at the far end. He bleated loudly when he saw me, stomping his hooves like he knew rescue was coming. The gate was chained, but Emily whipped out bolt cutters from her backpack and snapped the lock. I slipped inside. Milo was filthy, mud caking his legs, his collar swapped for rough rope. I knelt, whispering, "We're going home, buddy," as I untied him. Footsteps crunched behind me. "What do you think you're doing?" I spun around. Linda, hands on hips, face twisted in rage. "You stole him first," I shot back. "This isn't over," she sneered. Before I could respond, Greg appeared with a walkie-talkie. "I called security," he grinned. "You're done." I grabbed Milo's rope and ran. Emily had already darted ahead. Linda's shouts echoed as Greg's heavy steps thudded closer. Milo kept up like a champ. We ducked between parked cars, and Emily waved from her truck. "Get in," she hissed. I hoisted Milo into the back as Greg lunged, his fingers grazing the handle as Emily floored it. Tires squealed, and we left Greg flailing in the dust. We raced home, laughing like lunatics. Milo was safe. Daisy nearly tackled him when I brought him back to the pen. For a moment, I could breathe. Then Emily's phone buzzed. "You might want to see this," she said, showing me an HOA post. Linda had uploaded a photo of me with Milo, captioned, "Wanted for theft. Criminal at large." My smile faded. She's not letting this go. Emily grinned. Neither are we. Next morning, Greg showed up with an eviction notice signed by Linda. "Emergency HOA meeting tonight," he warned. "Better start packing." But I wasn't going anywhere. "She wants a war?" I muttered. "Fine, let's give her one." The day of the meeting felt like the quiet before a storm. Linda had spent the morning plastering flyers with my face, labeled "Dangerous Scofflaw, Threat to Our Community," in every mailbox. She wanted me humiliated and gone, but I wasn't backing down. Emily, Uncle Ray, and Clara, a retired HOA member who despised Linda, met at my place to strategize. Clara, who'd quit the board years ago, had watched Linda turn the HOA into her personal fiefdom. "She's been skimming funds for years," Clara said, scribbling in her old leather planner. "Flower bed fines, fake violations, hyped-up fundraisers. She's pocketed plenty." "You're saying she's stealing?" I asked. "Creative accounting," Clara replied. "Tonight's your chance to expose her." I doubted I could sway the neighborhood after Linda's smear campaign, but Clara had a trump card: Greg. He was loyal to Linda, but he was also spineless. Push him hard enough, and he'd crack. The meeting was in the community clubhouse, Linda's HOA throne room. She sat up front like a judge, flanked by her cronies. The room buzzed with whispers, mostly aimed at me. "All right, folks," Linda announced, grinning like she'd already won. "Let's begin." She launched into a dramatic tale of my goat theft, claiming I'd attacked Greg, who sported a fake arm sling for sympathy, and endangered everyone by freeing livestock. When she finished, she turned to me, syrupy sweet. "Now, Tom, before we vote on your removal, anything to say?" I stood, clearing my throat. Half the room was already against me, but I had to strike hard. "Actually, I do. Let's talk about Linda's barbecue." Her smile wavered. "You all remember her big HOA party last weekend? Best barbecue around, right? Mystery meat, she called it." A few nodded. "Well, that meat didn't come from a butcher. It came from this." I held up a photo Emily had snapped in Linda's backyard, a shipment from a shady online vendor notorious for illegal exotic meats. "Linda's been buying mystery meat for months. Unregulated, unsafe for your families." The room stirred. Linda jumped up. "That's ridiculous. You're deflecting from your crimes." "Am I?" I said. "Or are you mad because you've been billing the HOA for premium catering while pocketing the difference?" Linda paled. "Don't believe me? Ask Greg. He hauled in those meat deliveries." Every head turned to Greg. He squirmed, sweating. "Tell them, Greg," I said. "Tell them about the mystery meat. Tell them about Milo." Greg fidgeted, his face crimson. Linda glared daggers. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "Really?" I pulled out my phone. "Because I've got a recording of you right here." I hit play. Greg's panicked voice filled the room. "She put the goat in the fundraiser. She figured no one noticed if one went missing." The crowd erupted. Linda shrieked. "That's a lie. He's twisting it." "You think so?" I said. "I've also got HOA financials, thanks to Clara, showing Linda's been writing herself bonus checks under fake expenses for years." Clara stood, waving a thick folder. "She's been bleeding this neighborhood dry. Fines, fake inspections, livestock theft. The HOA's her personal piggy bank." "Enough," Linda screamed. "I'm the president. I make the rules." "Not anymore," Clara said coolly. "The board's voting you out, effective now." Linda's face contorted as the room cheered. She stormed out, Greg slinking behind her. By the end, Clara was reinstated as HOA president, and folks were already talking about lower fines and real community events. On the way home, Emily laughed. "You should have seen Linda's face. I thought she'd blow a gasket." "I can't believe Greg caved that fast," I said. "Weak link," Emily grinned. "HOA cops aren't so tough." At home, Daisy and Milo greeted me at the fence, tails wagging. I scratched their heads, the tension in my chest finally easing. Linda was gone, my goats were safe, and the neighborhood could breathe. Weeks later, things felt almost too calm. No more mornings dreading Linda or Greg lurking with citations. People walked dogs without fear of leash-length lectures. Daisy and Milo grazed happily, free of glares from Linda's window. It was good, too good. I knew Linda wouldn't vanish quietly. Clara swore her influence was dead, but I wasn't so sure. People like Linda didn't quit, they plotted. One afternoon, I found a notice on my door. For a second, I panicked, thinking Linda had clawed back. But it was from Clara and the HOA. They'd voted to throw a barbecue to celebrate Linda's exit, and picked my place to host, since, as Clara wrote, "You've got the best livestock around." Risky, but I couldn't refuse. The barbecue day buzzed with energy. Neighbors filled my yard with chairs and blankets. Daisy and Milo stole the show, kids petted them, and one girl crowned Milo with flowers, which he tolerated. Clara ruled the grill like a general, barking orders over her potato salad. Even Greg showed up, stripped of his HOA cop status, looking lost without a clipboard. I was mid-burger when Emily sidled up, tense. I just saw Linda. She's lurking by the street. Here? Now. I nearly choked. Emily nodded. She's not here for peace. I wove through the crowd to the front. Sure enough, Linda stood across the street, half hidden by a car, muttering into her phone, her face sour. She was up to something. As if on cue, she spotted me, pocketed her phone, and marched over. Enjoying your little party? She sneered. Funny how fast they forget all I did for this place. You mean how you robbed them blind? I shot back. Yeah, real memorable. Her smile turned icy. Don't get cozy. This neighborhood hasn't seen the last of me. Whatever you're scheming, it won't work, I said. No one's buying your crap anymore. I don't need crap, Linda smirked. I've got proof. I laughed. Proof of what? That you're a pest? Proof your goats trashed my property last week, tore up my flower beds, wrecked my garden. I've got security footage. I blinked. That's impossible. They've been locked up. We'll see what the HOA says, she grinned, then strutted off, radiating triumph. Back in the yard, Daisy and Milo munched grass, looking innocent. But Linda's threat gnawed at me. If she had video, someone, or something, had let my goats out. That night, I double-checked the pen's locks. Secure. I barely slept, Linda's voice looping in my head. Next morning, Clara banged on my door, laptop in hand, grim-faced. You need to see this. The video was grainy, but clear. 2 goats tromped through Linda's yard, trampling flowers. One wore Milo's blue collar. Impossible, I said. They were locked up. There's more, Clara said, fast-forwarding. A hooded figure crept into my yard, fumbling with the pen's latch. That's Greg, I muttered, recognizing his clumsy shuffle. Clara's jaw tightened. Linda's still got him on a leash. I stormed to Greg's place, pounding his door. He answered, sheepish, rubbing his arm. Look, man, it wasn't my idea. Whose was it? I barked. Linda's, Greg spilled. She said if I let the goats loose, she'd blame you and get you kicked out. Promised to wipe my HOA fines. You're unbelievable, I muttered. I'm sorry, Greg pleaded. I'll tell the board everything. And he did. At the next meeting, Greg confessed, sabotage, fake accusations, all Linda's plan. It backfired. The board banned her from HOA events. Greg, trying to save face, spent weekends hauling gravel for a new trail under Clara's stern eye. Linda vanished soon after. Rumor said she moved to torment another suburb. They'd learn the hard way. With her gone, life normalized. Daisy and Milo resumed their antics, sneaking onto my porch for attention but staying out of trouble. They'd earned their spot here. One evening, grilling steaks, I caught Milo eyeing the barbecue. Don't even think it, I warned. He bleated softly, then butted Daisy playfully. For the first time in forever, this place felt like home.